Good morning. It's Friday, April the 8th, and I've decided Fridays are going to be my day for walking around the lake. So that's what we're going to do today. And if I do that every Friday, you can watch the seasons change if you watch every one of them, which I can't imagine anybody will. It's about -1 this morning, so I started with my hat and gloves on. Probably that won't last too long once I really get walking. But another beautiful day, though a bit breezy. You can maybe hear the wind. I'm sure we'll encounter it as we go around the lake. It's the first post-Kickstarter walk. My Kickstarter to fund an anthology of short stories featuring authors who were guests during the second year of my Aurora Award-winning podcast, The World Shapers, theworldshapers.com, succeeded. Wrapped up yesterday, 112% funded, $16,867. That total might change as they try to collect the money. Some pledges sometimes don't go through because people enter the wrong information or whatever. And then Kickstarter takes its fee. Oh, woodpecker. Where is he? Can I see him? Probably on the... Oh, there he is. Don't know if I can get close enough to see him or not. I don't know what that sound is. But the woodpecker is... There he is. Right up there. There he goes. Scared him off. They like the telephone poles. I don't know how much they find to eat in one of those things. So usual path here. Possibly the underpass is open, but I doubt it. It was very flooded. What is that sound? It's not my knees. They don't creak like that. So yes, the Kickstarter has funded, and now I've already reached out to the authors. I'll start to collect stories. I already have some. There's editing, there's contracting, there's paying, book design, book layout, design the cover, and then eventually publish, ebook and print. And that will be volume 2. Should all be out. Oh, and then I have to send out backers rewards. The books themselves are sent out by the printer directly from the printing facility to backers. But all the extra books, like volume 1, or anybody that bought some of mine, pledged for some of mine, which certainly happened, I have to put those in the mail, which is a major undertaking, I know from last year. Someone asked me on Kickstarter this morning why some of the pledge levels were a little higher for this book. I was asking for more money just to get the book, and I explained that this is going to be a much thicker book than Volume 1. Volume 1 was 18 authors. I think it came in at under 100,000. I can't remember precisely, 100,000 words. But Volume 2 has 24 authors. Minimum, I think, it'll be 120,000 words, and it may be more because I seem to be getting longer stories. So, that's the other thing. You don't know when you go into this precisely. So I had to make sure that I had enough money to pay the authors and produce the book. I don't make a cent, and it's all break even at best, and possibly a loss. I don't make a cent until the book starts selling at the end of all this. And of course, if I do it on an hourly basis, the number of hours I put into this Kickstarter and will put into the book, editing and producing the book, one really does not wish to figure it on an hourly basis. Yeah, that's what I thought. The underpass is still closed off, so it must still be flooded. It's -1 right now, I think I said. It'll start to warm up pretty quick, but I'm starting with hat and gloves. So we will have to use the walkway here. Pedestrian crossing or jaywalk. There's the legislative building over there. The sun will be in my eyes for this entire side of the lake going east. Lots of cars coming, so I'm not jaywalking. That goes. There again is Speaker's Corner, which has a connection to Hyde Park in London. Well, a lot of blue water here. Last time I came, it was all still ice. There's still ice over there, but over here right now, closer to the spillway, it's all blue and liquid, which is nice. I don't think that can possibly still be flooded over there, but they still have it blocked off, the walkway back there, because you can see the water. I suppose it could still be down in the walkway itself. That must be what it is. So there's the lake, Wascana Lake, all formed by the dam that's under the bridge there on Wascana Creek there, and I'm already taking off my hat. Probably take off my gloves pretty soon. But it's much prettier when the water is liquid. Well, I don't know, it's a different kind of pretty, but you can see the reflection of the legislative building dome in the water. Well, I haven't said it yet, but if you're watching this live on Facebook or YouTube, you can leave a comment and I'll see it and respond if I can read it. Going this direction, it's hard to see the screen. Yeah, I think I'll do this. I'll make Friday morning my walk around the lake day. So watch the lake change as the seasons go by. So there's still ice over there. And it's funny, the birds seem to kind of like it. They have a extra beach. You can sit on the ice and then get into the water or dive into the water if they're a duck for feeding. Oh, there's someone. I can't quite read it. Let's see. Ryan. Hi, Ed. Hi, Ryan. One of these days I'll walk to the science center where I started work when I came to Regina. So when I used to ride my bike to work, which I did some, I was in the same general neighborhood where I am now, just a couple blocks over on Garnet Street. So I would ride along this path to get to the science center. Go about halfway around the lake and then you cross. Technically the science center is on the lake, just not this part of the lake. It's on the other side of Broad Street. In the old Sask Power generating building, which is why it's called the Powerhouse of Discovery. So I assume it still is. See the geese, or gulls, I guess. In that case, it looks like sitting on the ice. When I started work, we weren't there yet. We were in temporary. I was the communications officer. That's what brought me up to Regina from Weyburn. And we were still building exhibits and, talking it up and getting ready to open. And we had offices on Rose Street in the warehouse district. And we're watching the powerhouse being renovated, which was cool. Then when they built the IMAX theater, the powerhouse part was open. The science center itself was open. When the IMAX theater was built, I took a photograph every day from the same two places, one outside and one upstairs where you could look down into the space. And I assume those are still at the science center somewhere. If they were digitized, they'd make a cool time lapse record of the building of the IMAX theater. But when I was working there in the early 90s, we weren't digitizing photographs. Everything was still film and paper. I assume they're there somewhere. Oh, there's some ducks. And lots of birds on the ice over there. And a lot of bright sunlight right there on the water. It's blinding me. Should have worn sunglasses. Have the technology. Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. 10 points to anybody who knows that reference. This is probably dry, so I'll cut a little bit of the loop off here and walk on the grass. As usual, I seem to have confused the gimbal by pointing it at something like the ducks. And it decides, oh, you want to point over in some weird direction. No, I still want you to point right in front of me. Yeah, lots of open water, lots of birds having conversations. Mostly about sex, I'm sure. This is mating, laying eggs season. Ah. Not actually on the grass. I said I was walking on the grass. They actually put down wood chips along here to keep down the weeds. Because this may not be an official path, but it's still part of the path, really. I am getting quite warm. Oh, I think the gloves are going to go too here. Now, I mentioned before, that's Willow Island over there. Oh, now it's decided it wants to point at the sky. Which features in my Shards of Excalibur books because, well, two things. At the end of the Shards of Excalibur books, Excalibur ends up in the water, just over on this edge of the lake, of the island. So, Excalibur is down there at the bottom of the water. If anybody wants to dive and look for it. It's far enough offshore, it's probably not down there with shopping carts and some of the other things that have been dredged out of the lake over the years. But yeah, that's where it ends up. Bit of a spoiler there, but I'm pretty sure people reading that book, that series, about the teens searching for the scattered pieces of Excalibur so it can be reforged, will not find it too much of a spoiler to know that in the 5th book, all 5 pieces have been found and it's been reforged. It'd be a very strange choice to have them fail in the 5th book. That final book has a big scene at Cannington Manor, which is a failed town, failed experiment, really. There was an English gentleman who set up a community there, betting on the hope that the railroad would come through, and then the railroad went considerably south of there, I guess. And part of it was he was trying to set up an English-style village with, so there was a big manor house that belonged to one family. They used to do the riding after hounds and all of that, but unfortunately the community went away and it became a, I guess you call it a museum. Historic site anyway. So there's what's left of the old community, interpretive centers. And I wrote the copy for the interpretive center there, which is one reason I thought of it when I was writing Shards of Excalibur. So there's, now with water, last time I was here it was ice. Here's Willow Island, and this patch of water in between here is where a staircase into the lake opens up, and my teen character, Ariane Forsyth, here's singing, and she goes down that watery staircase, followed by Wally Knight, who happens by on his bicycle. And they find the Lady of the Lake from King Arthur down at the bottom, deeper than the lake is, as they notice, and are given this quest of finding the scattered shards of Excalibur before Merlin can. He's the bad guy in my book. Geese having a conversation. Yeah, Merlin is like, his real name is, modern day name is Rex Major, and he's like a Bill Gates, Steve Jobs kind of guy. Yes, well. Probably going to be eggs out of that conversation at some point. And baby geese. It's not the conversation that makes the eggs. I actually know that. You can actually take a boat to Willow Island. You can book it for picnics and things. That's why it has like pavilions on it and the landing and everything. That's where the fireworks are set off when they have them. So Shards of Excalibur, if you're interested, you're watching this and you hear this, and I haven't mentioned it before. If you've watched a lot of these, I've mentioned it before. Shardsofexcalibur.com is its own website. You can get the ebooks through shadowpawpress.com, and the Kato Books print editions I still have lots of, so you can get those as well. It was published by Kato Books here in Regina, the whole 5-book series, but Kato Books unfortunately went out of business, so the rights came back to me, and I brought out new ebook editions, and I will bring out new print editions at some point, but since there's so much of the former stock from Kato Books available, it hasn't been an urgent thing to do. I think it'd make a great TV series, but so any movie producers among the 10 or 15 people that watch these things, give me a call. I do supposedly have somebody who's pitching World Shapers, my current series, as a TV series, but I haven't had an update in a little bit. I don't know what the status of that is. We were waiting for somebody to decide something. There's Willow Island, still lots of ice in the water on this side of it. You can see the pavilions and the little boat landing over there. I like doing these walks in the morning because of the light, the extended shadows, and I just think it's a more interesting time of day. And of course in the evening you get what's called the golden hour for photographers, when the sun starts to go down and things turn to gold. Looks like my horizon might be a little wonky, but it's really hard to, I think it's just the way I hold the camera, and that varies. If this wasn't Saskatchewan, the horizon wouldn't matter so much, but there's always a flat horizon out there somewhere in Saskatchewan. There's the ledge across the ice. So quite a bit of ice down on this end of the lake. It's a big patch open water over there too, so won't be long till it's all water. Although I think it's cooling off again this weekend, and there was some talk of more snow showers. I don't know if it'll be enough, so I'm taking a walk in the snow again, and I thought I was done, but we'll see. It's actually cooled off already. It was 20 yesterday or the day before. The snow in our backyard has finally disappeared. The last icy lump is finally gone. There's the lake, the bridge, and the ledge in it. And the ice and the birds and the sky and the trees. And I'm starting to get warmer as I walk. because it's more interesting, I think I'll take this path down closer to the water. It adds a little bit of length, but that's okay. And it is water, mostly. I guess there's still ice there, but there's water over there. And geese. There are always geese in Wascana Lake vicinity. Even though in the Science Center, in fact, there's a book I wrote, a picture book, I assume it's still on display, that was illustrated by Ward Shell, about, what was that? Hiawatha. Was that the name of the goose? I think so. Like this one pair that was all there was at one point. There's a lot more than one pair now, as you can hear. I haven't been into that room over there, the Science Center. I don't know if it's been redesigned since the last time I looked. There's an overlook up there, which I've been on before. And then this little pond later on will have a fountain in it, an aeration fountain really, to aerate the water. There's another one way over on the other side that I already walked by as well, an aeration fountain. The oxygen content up in the water for the fishies. You know, I've never done this, so I'll go this way and then climb up. If I go that way, I get kind of down by the marina, which is fine. So you can walk around this little pond. And you can climb up over there, but I'm going to be naughty and cut over the grass. Not that there's a sign that says keep off the grass, but someone commented on one of these walks about how many trees we had. And I pointed out several times that every single tree was planted by hand by someone. There were probably some willows down by the creek, and that would have been it when people first were here. When the First Nations were here, and then when the settlers came, there were no trees. Now there's, I don't know, 250,000 trees in Regina. I think when I worked at the city temporarily as communications officer, the number was 220,000 we were using. But then, who counts them? Pretty sure it's approximate. All right. Go down here. Boat shed there. Canoeing clubs. And then this is the marina over there, and this has a restaurant in it called Bar Willow. Has the nicest deck in town because it overlooks the lake. All decks in Regina are subject to the, whether it's wasp season or not, about how nice they are, and maybe how bad the mosquitoes are, but the view's always nice out across the lake. We've often gone there for birthdays and things like that. So far, only one live comment this morning, but if you happen to be watching this live, leave a comment and greeting or a question, and I can respond. Right now I'm responding by unzipping my coat because I have gotten warm enough. Jogger up there. I was jogging last year, although I didn't do it around the lake because, well, For one thing, I think the walk only in one direction is stupid when you're outdoors. But anyway, I was walking more over where I've walked along the creek, jogging along there. But it was really bothering my knees, and then I'd have to stop for 2 weeks because my knee hurt. So I think I'm going to stick to walking. A little less impact. There's the marina part of the marina. We have dragon boat races. That's where they all set up and go off from. So much of the stuff that we're doing, like walking one way around the lake, has absolutely no impact on the spread of the virus. Never did, never would, never will. It's more like theater. People feel like somebody's doing something. There's normally a waterfall over, not normally, but part of the year there's a waterfall on that island over there. That's called Pine Island. And that's also for aeration. And when it's running sometime, I'll walk out there and walk under it. Won't that be exciting? Hello, more geese. Did I confuse the gimbal when I did that? A little bit. Once again, it's pointing off to the left instead of straight ahead. I don't know how it decides. And I can see my, I don't know, maybe the horizon's okay. Sometimes it looks crooked, sometimes it's okay. So it's probably the way I'm holding the, it's the gulls over there on the ice. Oh, this is open almost. Won't be long anyway. There's still some water down there. But I think you could get it through there now. So one of these days I will go on the other side of there and walk around the university. I don't know if I'll do it as part of one walk all the way from home. That's quite lengthy if I do. But I might park at the center of the arch. Yes, 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 that's the path. Why are you following it? Stick with me here, gimbal. Point forward. I might park across the road at the Connexus Art Center and then walk to the university and around the university from there. For a change, one of these days. More gulls on the ice. I guess they're not really seagulls. It's an awful long way to the sea. Land gulls, I think you can call them. I don't know what their scientific name might be. There's the breeze. Now I'm thinking I might have to zip up my coat again if I was feeling that the rest of the way, but I won't because I'll be behind the trees again. Coming across the lake, it's still pretty cold. Cotton ball on a piece of tape has actually worked quite well as a noise suppressor for the wind. And it's a lot cheaper than buying an external mic with a windsock on it. So since it's not like this is a money-making operation, walking and talking with a camera, technically a phone, but also a camera. And if you told me that when I was 18 years old, 17 years old, then I'd have a powerful pocket computer that also serves as a phone and a camera and a video camera at that. I thought, wow, that's the future. And I guess it is. Here I am. I made it this far into the future. It always feels like the present, though. The weirdest thing. It's not the future. It's always the present. You never get to the future. Gulls. Thought for a minute that was a chunk of ice, but it's actually a piece of wood. And once again, the gimbals decided to sort of point off to the right. Left, I should say. My left, your right? No, that doesn't even work. It's everybody's left. You get used to that in the theater. Stage left or audience left. Lots of ducks over here under the bridge. So there's a nice bridge over there to Pine Island. Which again, I'll cross at some point. Oh, somebody must have put bread or something here. Yeah, there's some sort of crumbs. Somebody was feeding the ducks. All of the cyclists. Oh, there's someone else. Oh, it's Miriam. Hi, Miriam. Miriam has been with me on a few walks now. All the way from India, I think. Well, there's the lake again. A lot more water now than the last time I walked this way, even though it's technically below freezing this morning. I like doing these walks around the lake on the weekday mornings because there's fewer people on the path. I'm less self-conscious about apparently talking to myself. Yeah, danger, thin ice. Yeah, I think they nailed it. That's about as thin as ice gets. Non-existent. Say awesome environment, no deformation, praise God. Well, except it's all entirely artificial. The lake is artificial or man-made, and every tree was planted by somebody. So it's really a park. It's not the natural environment in many ways, but it has provided habitat for waterfowl. I mean, originally there wasn't even a lake here, just the creek. It might have had a few willows on it, otherwise bare prairie, creek winding through it. And then they built the dam, the bridge, made Wascana Lake fairly early on, because there's pictures from when the legislative building was being built in the early 20th century. The lake is there already. Then in the 30s, as a make-work project, I think they deepened it and built, I think that's when Willow Island was built. And then as I've mentioned before, just a few years ago, about 22 or 3, no, yeah, about 2002, 2003, I'm trying to remember how little Alice was. They drained the entire lake, deepened it significantly. It was starting to silt in and would have disappeared, turned into a swamp over time. By deepening it, they figured they gave it another 100 years of life. And they, there's the Wascana Rehab Center over there. I walked around it the other day. Also, at its deepest, it's now about 9 meters deep. So it doesn't freeze over the winter to the bottom, which allows fish to overwinter in it. Before, the fish all died and you had to restock the lake. The deepest part is kind of right what I'm walking by now, around Pine Island there, the other side. No, wait a minute. That one back there is Pine Island. I think this is Goose Island, if I remember right. Unlike the other two, there's no real intention for people to go to that one. Here, let's walk down the dirt path right by the water down there. So it's just overgrown with bush and trees and left to the animals. So the lake has been here a long time, but it's not natural in any sense, except that it is now a habitat for wildlife. You can tell by the size of some of the old trees just how long the lake has been here. Like that. These two here have been here a while. I don't know why it grew that way, with the trunk actually lying down like that. Did it fall over at some point but stayed alive? I don't know. You can see that the twigs are starting to bud out. Look, little tiny specks of green starting to show up. It won't be long till we have some greenery to show on these walks. I use the royal we, I guess. Oh, very sad news about Prince Philip dying today. He made it to 99. He almost made it to 100. Which ain't bad. Makes me feel young at 61, going on 62. I am 61, going on 62. Nobody ever wrote a song like that. Closest you get is the Beatles, when I'm 64. And that's coming perilously close. Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Back on the path of righteousness, or at least the path of pavement. I don't know how righteous it is. Here's a little overlook I've never actually walked out on. What does the plaque say? Located in the tranquil, Spruce Island, that's what it's called. Located in the tranquil lee of Spruce Island, this Wascana Lake overlook has been made possible through the generous support of Saturn of Regina. Saturn doesn't exist anymore as a car company, does it? Anyway, there's the lake. That's the Connexus Arts Center, that building over there, the main performance space in town. And I guess that's Spruce Island. As you can see, it's quite overgrown and not really someplace that people go. Left for the birds. It's for the birds, but more buds on the tree there, you can see. It's still a little bit of ice over here. From an exercise point of view, I suppose I shouldn't stop and look, but now see, let's see where the gimbal thinks I want to point. It always gets confused when I do things like that. Oh, there's the, might as well walk up to the totem pole there. I haven't done that yet. Take a turn around it. Totem poles are not part of the First Nations culture here in Saskatchewan. It's a West Coast thing. But this one was given. There'll be a plaque somewhere explaining it. You can see it. Should make a good thumbnail for the YouTube video later. Here's the actual front of it. So if you're looking at it head on, that's what you see. And I don't see an explanatory plaque. I've read it before. It must be over here. No, it must be being cleaned or something. So I don't remember the exact details of why this was given to the city. It must be in my book, but it's Historic Walks of Regina Moose Jaw, but I don't remember off the top of my head. And the explanatory plaque doesn't seem to be there. All right, we will go rejoin the main branch, the main path again and again, correcting the, I think it must have some sort of follow function, and it thinks I want to follow something because I pointed in a different direction. Picnic area in here, always popular in the summertime. Back on the proper path. I guess I'll follow the path part of the way, then I'm going to cut in front of the Saskatchewan Legislative Building for variation. I think my horizon is a little more slanty than sometimes. But again, if I adjust the angle of my wrist, it might adjust that too. So it might just be the variation in the way I hold it as my hand gets tired, and in fact I think I'll switch hands today. All right, now you want to point at the sky. Well, there's the sky, it's very blue. You want to point at the path. There you go. Haven't had anybody say hi. Well, no, that's not true. Ryan said hi from Facebook to start with. Oh, is there a note there? Does your wife do exercises? She has done yoga recently. It's been non-conducive to doing anything while gyms have been closed and all of that sort of thing. We used to do step aerobics together before we were married, and then we'd go to her house and her mom would make us macaroni and cheese. So I'm not sure on the calorie front we came out on the positive side there. The tennis courts over there to my left. I can't really see them through the trees. Well, I guess you can see them there. Oh, it's hard to, I'm going to go back to my right hand. It's really hard to use my left hand to point at things. So excuse the jerking around there for a minute. So yeah, I think they're called the Lakeshore Tennis Club. Not that I'm a tennis player. I was a badminton player. Wasn't too bad at that. In comparison to my fellow university students in Searcy, Arkansas, where badminton was not played as much as we had played it in high school in Saskatchewan. So for once in my life, I was one of the best badminton players around, at least in my gym class, which is a pretty small round. I should still have my racket somewhere. I haven't played in a long, long time. My wife and I played a little squash too at one point, but again, that was a long time ago. Mostly my exercise has been walking. As I have mentioned before, I did do quite religiously. I was doing weight training for a couple of years, but COVID stopped that. And then my gym closed completely that I'd always gone to, the downtown YMCA. So I don't know if I'll pick that up again or not. An hour of walking is pretty much my limit as far as how much time I feel I want to put into exercise during a day, well, with everything else I have to do. So adding weights too, change that. I don't know. Once everything's back to normal, as the vaccines and everything take hold and the gyms reopen properly, I might join another gym. There's one downtown that I could check out. I always got a personal trainer because I needed to have an appointment I had to keep. There's the fountain, not ready yet. Coming from London, and beyond it, Legislative Building. But I'm going to go down here and walk along the front of the Legislative Building instead of cutting through there like I sometimes do. So if I do this every Friday, will next Friday all the ice be gone? Place your bets now. There's downtown over there on the other side of the lake. We'll go down this way, front of the ledge. Since Prince Philip died, we'll take a look at the Queen Elizabeth statue here. This is where I met the Queen when Alice, who's now 20, almost 20, was 3. She came through Canada on a visit. She came to Regina. It was pouring rain. We stood out in the rain waiting for her walkabout with Alice in my arms. And Alice had flowers to give her. We managed to get a front row spot. And when the Queen came by, she kind of missed Alice, but then she looked back and saw that she was there, or someone pointed us out, I'm not sure entirely. And she reversed her course and came back to make sure that she got Alice's flowers, and I got a lovely close-up picture of the Queen because I was holding Alice and she was holding the flowers. And a lovely picture of Alice holding the flowers. What I didn't get was a picture of Alice giving her the flowers because they were too close. I couldn't get them in the camera shot. But that picture of Alice with her flowers and the Queen with the flowers, those two pictures side by side, ran on the front page of the Weyburn Review, my old newspaper that I used to work for. Last time I had a picture in the Weyburn Review, years after I'd left already. It's like 10 years after I'd left the paper already at that point. Saskatchewan Legislative Building. See the flags are flying at half-mast because of Prince Philip. So the walkabout was right over here. This was the dedication for this statue of the Queen on her favorite horse, which was a Canadian horse. Burmese, I think his name was. So she came down here and there was crowds, of course, all around here. And she had a big bowl-shaped umbrella that was transparent so you could see her through it, because it was pouring rain. And she dedicated the statue here, which is right in front of the directly line of sight with the front of the legislative building there. So she dedicated the statue. And then we were standing right, it must have been right about here. There was fencing up, of course, somewhere along here. Might even have been right here. And she came over and got Alice's flowers, and I got a picture. So she was very gracious to come back and get Alice's flowers, even after she'd moved past. Unfortunately, Alice was only 3. She doesn't remember it. She's seen the picture, but she doesn't actually remember the Queen. But I do, so I remember it for both of us. Of course, I'm an American by birth and inclination, really, I think. But I do have a soft spot for the royal family, and especially for the Queen. And I like the fact that Canada has that. I like the difference between the countries. So she is the Queen of Canada. And then there's the Governor General, who's her representative for the whole country. And then there's a Lieutenant Governor in Saskatchewan, who at one point In the early years of Canada, the Lieutenant Governor at then Saskatchewan Regina was capital of the Northwest Territories, which covered pretty much all of Western Canada and up into the north. And the Lieutenant Governor in those days had a lot of power and basically ruled all of that territory in the Queen's name from Government House here in Regina. And I actually wrote the history, or I revised an existing history and added to it considerably of Government House a few years ago. So if you visit Government House and you buy the history book, that's by me. And I interviewed the lieutenant governors who were still alive at that time, and interviewed one that came along after the book came out, because it took a long time to get out for various reasons. So I brought it up to date. There's one whole chapter I wrote that was no longer accurate. It was just dumped from the book. It took so long for the book to come out. But it was a great project to work on, and Government House is a great place to visit. It's a museum now, but the Lieutenant Governor's offices are still in it. Of course, originally the Lieutenant Governor and his family lived there. It's when was it built? The new one? I should know that. Well over 100 years old anyway, the current Government House. More like 115 or something. You'd think I know. I wrote the history book, but I write a lot of stuff. It all kind of blurs together sometimes. It's a really nice museum. It's been restored to about the 1910 period, Edwardian period. Most of the furniture, the original furniture, was lost because when the socialist government came in, CCF, they had no truck with all this royalty stuff. Tommy Douglas. They basically sold everything, stripped the building, turned it into, I think it was even a rehab center after the war, and then they had like college classes there, but they sold everything, which is a real shame. It should have been turned into a museum at that point, but that was not the government of the day's idea. One of the interesting stories is that they do have quite a bit of the original silver and china, because it was in a vault which they couldn't get opened. And the story, as I remember it, is that the guy who knew how to open the vault, I think it was a key, not a combination, hid it. He wasn't going to have them emptying the vault and selling it off for petty cash. And so they managed to save all that when it was restored finally as a museum. Anyway, I highly recommend visiting it if you're ever in Regina. And buying my book. Not that I make any money off of that, but it's still a good book. That part about the NDP, well, CCF, Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, Canada's, North America's first avowedly socialist government. Just about the last, too. I think NDP is somewhat moderated from what the CCF was. But, the way they stripped Government House still makes me mad. A few pieces were found and brought back. Most of what's in there is just pieces of the period. All before my time, of course. I wasn't born until 1959, so it was ancient history even by the time I came along. And I'm pretty ancient. Are there fishing activities and agriculture? Well, Saskatchewan is entirely an agricultural province. Breadbasket of Canada. Wheat. Ranching, some ranching. I mean, there's other crops, but wheat is certainly the top crop, and oats and rye and all that kind of thing. Fishing, not commercial fishing. We're landlocked. We have lots of lakes, so sport fishing, especially up north, there's flying caps that people will fly into to fish. And ice fishing in the winter, but no commercial fishing that I'm aware of. Probably might be some fish farming. I don't know. Like in the restaurants, you can buy Lake Diefenbaker trout and things like that, which are from Saskatchewan. So I suppose there is some small scale commercial fishing where people are catching these fish and selling them to restaurants and so forth, but nothing on a huge scale. I could jaywalk, but I won't. Still cars coming. But yeah, agriculture is what we're all about, actually. Agriculture and mining up north. I mean, Saskatchewan has a huge amount of the world's uranium. I also wrote a book that was the history of the Saskatchewan Mining Association, so I knew quite a bit about mining at one point too. It always sounds, people ask me a question, say, well, I wrote a book once. When I was a kid, it was always in school. I read in a book that, and now half the time I seem to say, well, I wrote a book, or I wrote a science column on that, or something. I wrote a science column, a weekly science column for 17, no more than that. It was on radio for 17 years. It was in newspapers of one sort or another for probably 20 for sure. So that's a lot of things I've written about to some level. And then the local history stuff I've done, because I also did the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Saskatchewan history book, which talked quite a bit about mining and agriculture and all that. And I also wrote the history of the Saskatchewan Land Surveyors Association, which talked a lot about, you know, how we got our, why we talk about grid roads, because they follow the survey lines, and why Saskatchewan is the only province with completely artificial boundaries. They were just surveyed, they didn't follow any natural feature whatsoever, which is why we're basically a big rectangle. Really big rectangle. Angus Boulevard leads to the alley, leads to Angus Crescent, leads to home. Quiet again now that we're past Albert Street. Someone working on a house probably is the power saw off in the distance. Wascana Lake over there has fish in it. I don't think anybody would want to eat them because it is a landlocked lake surrounded by a city with all sorts of things flowing into the water. Can't say I've ever seen anybody fishing in the lake, but I do know that there are fish, and as I mentioned earlier, the deepening of the lake a few years ago was partly to allow fish to overwinter. Lake Diefenbaker is also an artificial lake. It's, I mentioned the Lake Diefenbaker trout. It's a reservoir formed by a dam on the South Saskatchewan River. So its fish are also basically not man-made, but man-assisted. That's Davin School directly ahead, now called the Crescent School, but would always be Davin School to us. That's where Alice went to elementary school. Literally just behind our house, across the alley. Almost home. More and more green in the grass out here. It's always the first thing. Oh, and there's a robin over there on the grass. Robin redbreast, harbinger of spring. Okay. Alrighty, well, that's the end of my walk around the lake, my Friday walk around the lake. So I think I'm going to do it on Friday. Pretty much exactly 1 hour, which is interesting. So thank you for joining me either live or if you're watching this on the recording. And I'll be back tomorrow, probably. Bye for now.